I have one more question for you. Ward 1 has experienced significant development in recent years. What are your priorities for future development programs and projects in the ward? Mr. Weaver?
Yeah, well, the first thing that I would do is I wouldn't take $4,500 from Perseus, who lit a fire, started a campaign of terror, pushed remnants out of their building, and actually it wasn't an ANC resolution. It was the Latin American Development Center and this ANC that organized the Tenant Association to fight back for that. So there's never a moment where afterwards I would take $4,500 in bundled money from Perseus for people that you had to bring with a subpoena to testify before the city council. Furthermore, the thing that I think has to happen is Baltimore has created some amazing projects where you look into how to do mid-income workforce housing. That needs to be the next push within Ward 1, because what we're losing right now, while we've retained 3,000 public housing units and we've retained Jubilee housing and we're looking at doing a redevelopment to Park Morton, what we aren't doing is looking for ways that teachers can afford to still live within the ward, that firefighters can afford to live within the ward, that nurses can afford to live within the ward. So the co-op angles that have happened in Baltimore are the next form of development that has to happen in the district. And I hope the Park Morton one would take at least one of the three options.
Mr. Smith?
I think anytime we give tax assistance or government money to a developer, we need to make sure the city and Ward 1 is getting something back in exchange for that. Jim Graham talked about trying to save some of the safety nets the other day. One, he didn't lobby his colleagues so that could actually be supported. He just introduced it so he could talk about it at forums like this. He did make sure that $447,000 made it into that budget for a tax abatement to the Heights on Georgia Avenue. He did make sure that $2.3 million made it into that same budget that same day for the Park Place at Petworth project. What he has not made sure in the last 4 years, the last 8 years, or the last 12 years, that any development that helps the community along Georgia Avenue made it to that area. The one thing we've heard for the last 4, 8, and 12 years is about a senior wellness center, which is still yet to open. Meanwhile, seniors along that corridor and throughout Ward 1 have been chased out of Ward 1, have been losing their homes with no assistance from the government, and Georgia Avenue remains nothing but liquor stores and check cashing places, and I think the people along that corridor deserve some of the development you're asking.
Time's up. Thank you. Mr. Graham.
Have you noticed that they've only talked about my record? They haven't said anything about their records. And you know there's a reason, because they don't have any record. They don't have any record. They have nothing that they can point to and say, here is what I did for Ward 1. And I'm here tonight to say, here's what I have done for Ward 1. You know, like anybody else, I'm a human being. You can't be perfect all of the time. But the fact of the matter is that you put your best foot forward and you do your best. I think development, you know, has to be taken as a key element of Ward 1's future, because I want jobs. And the thing I hear when I go through the neighborhoods of Ward 1, which I do all of the time, unlike some of my opponents who never seem to leave their blocks, is I hear people calling out to me, council member, can you get me a job? And I've responded to that. 100 new permanent positions in DPW for returning ex-offenders. Green teams throughout the ward, also opportunities for people who are coming back from the penitentiaries, entry-level jobs so they can put their lives back together, deal perhaps with substance abuse issues. This is what people in Ward 1 are talking about. You want to talk about theories and expectations, and you don't give people the right and the ability to have a livelihood, you're whistling in the wind. I say jobs come from prosperity. Prosperity comes from these projects.
Thank you all three for being here tonight and speaking to the audience.